Welcome to Tales from the Trenches, Season 4. Today, I have Michelle Benson with me.
Here's a story of a fundraiser who was launching his very own web show. Each episode is very short due to edits, so it can really flow. Here's a story of a podcast guest star who was busy raising money of their own. They were each great in their own way, fundraising in his own. Till the one day when Jack asked a guest to join him, and they knew it was much more than a jest, that these guests must somehow form a resource. That's the way they all became the podcast guests. The podcast guests. The podcast guests. That's the way they became the podcast guests.
Michelle Benson helps nonprofits to find and be found by funders on LinkedIn. By teaching fundraisers, CEOs, communications teams, trustees, and fundraising consultants how to use LinkedIn strategically, she enables organizations to connect with the most difficult-to-reach prospects: companies, trust funds, philanthropists, and their advisors, helping them achieve their fundraising targets. The offline world often keeps organizations from connecting with funders, but the online world is designed to connect you without barriers, if you know how to navigate it. Michelle has developed a simple and highly effective strategy for nonprofits to tap into LinkedIn's vast funding network without resorting to cold messaging or spending hours on content creation. With 30 years of fundraising experience, including roles as both a fundraiser and a funder, Michelle now focuses on teaching organizations worldwide how to use LinkedIn effectively. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Talk to me a little bit about people's personal opinions. I was always brought up that, you never talk religion or politics, at the dinner table or something. Is LinkedIn a place, provided you're not a religious leader or politician as your job? What about posting about religion and politics, the things that are kind of not talked about in nice company?
I think it depends on your target market. So there's a chap on LinkedIn, I can't remember his name, but it does pray.com. He's the CEO of pray.com. Every single post of his is religious because his target market are Christians. And so therefore, he's not talking to LinkedIn, he's talking to the Christians on LinkedIn. And so therefore he talks, it's extremely religious, and every post is. So I think ultimately what you're doing is you're starting a conversation with your target market. Some of them you know, some of them you don't know, but they're all very much like a lookalike crowd. And so, and if I was, say I was a religious charity and actually our donors were predominantly of a certain religion, if I'm talking to my donors about that religion and other people don't like it, well, they're not my target market. And they're perfectly entitled to block me and not follow me, and the other thing is, if they're not my target market, the chances of them seeing my stuff is very slim, because LinkedIn feeds you and everybody's news feed on LinkedIn is completely unique to them. Nobody shares the same news feed, and it's all based on your activity. And so if I'm not particularly religious, I'm not stopping. I've said nothing in my profile that should suggest that I'm interested in religion. And maybe I have seen a couple of things that I've just zoomed straight past. So now LinkedIn thinks, well, that's a waste of time. It's desperate to get my attention. So it's not going to serve up stuff that's not going to get my attention. Whereas if I stop on the political stuff, I stop on the religious stuff, it will serve me more of the same. So I think really be your genuine self, be authentic, write what you and your don't offend anyone, obviously. And the people that are interested in what you've got to say will engage, and the people that aren't won't.
That's an interesting take. I think on, it's called X now, but on Twitter, so many times when you see people's profile, they'll say, opinions are my own. They aren't, my company's or whatever. And you accept that with, a grain of salt, whatever. But LinkedIn is almost by definition, you're representing a company, whether you want to be public about it or not, right? You're there and it says that I'm working for ABC company right now.
Yeah.
And before that, I worked for the DEF company. And so, you almost become a representative of it. So can people be their true selves, or do they still have to kind of fall under the corporate, mandate where, we don't talk about this, or you can't publicly, if I were to say, if a charity I was working for was getting a ton of money from a government grant, I don't know if it would be in the best interest to, if the government makes a bad decision about something, to crap all over the government and say, oh my God, look at what they did. This is ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. Right. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. So how does that dichotomy work?
Again, I think the thing about LinkedIn, it's a virtual network for people at work. And so how do you behave at work? And let's forget LinkedIn and just said, right, you've just gone to a networking event, which is full of your potential audience, your target market, whoever they are, and you are at work. And you've got a badge on your chest that says, Jack works for so-and-so and that, and all the rest of it. And you're wandering around that event. How do you behave? And that's really it, because even though you could say, well, I could even say at that network, look, my company probably wouldn't want to say this, but in my personal opinion is X, Y, Z. You could say that in a post. It's the same difference, really. I think ultimately you're still kind of conscious of, the thing of, I always call it, in fact, it's known as boss over your shoulder. And so the reason a lot of people don't like and comment and engage in LinkedIn is because if I leave a comment, my boss might see it. If I post that, my boss is going to see it. So people have already self-regulated themselves anyway, and people self-regulate themselves in the office. You might be in the office and somebody says something and you strongly disagree with them, but you're at work and you think, if you were in the pub with your friends, you'd be all over it. But you're at work and they're the chair of your trustees, so you just sort of smile and think, jerk. But whatever, right? I think that's the. But again, you might then say at work, respectfully, I completely disagree with that. It's exactly the same on LinkedIn, really. But I think try to be your authentic self is generally, it's just be yourself and don't try to fake it is generally the best advice.
Usually great advice. If you were to kind of marry that with Facebook, I kind of have an unwritten policy that, LinkedIn is one set of connections, and Facebook, at least for me, is usually a different set of connections. There are people that I'm truly friends with. And if someone kind of wants to friend me on Facebook, I don't, I'm not friendly with them. It's a professional relationship. I usually throw them over to, why don't we do this on LinkedIn instead of Facebook?
Yeah.
And is that a common practice, or is that an advised practice that you kind of have two personas, right? Your LinkedIn persona, and then you can kind of, loosen the belt a little bit and be a little bit more relaxed on the Facebook persona.
Yeah. I think that's great. And to be honest, I think that's what you do in life. So when you go to the gym, when you're at the work, when you're with your, if you've got children, when you're a different, you just react. You're not the same person 100%. When hopefully you're not the same person as you are at the gym with your children, as it were. So different relationships and different situations, you behave accordingly. Platforms have different focuses. So LinkedIn's mission statement is to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. So it's all about people at work. The mind set is I'm at work. That's why it's such a great place to connect with CSR people or philanthropy. They're at work. So this is why, and it's a rubbish place to connect with people if you want someone to run a marathon for you in their spare time, because they've got their work head on. It's not, Meanwhile, if you look at the mission statement of Facebook's mission statement is all about building community. It's all about the communities. So therefore, if you were looking for marathon runners, not corporate marathon runners, but just people in their spare time, Facebook is great, because now you've got the gyms and the running clubs and the hobbies and the and so all of that crap, and they're in that headspace. I'm chilling. I'm in my pajamas on the sofa going through Facebook. I'm not on my way to work in my, going through LinkedIn, as it were. So it's a kind of, you're in a different space and it's a different you. And therefore, so again, I always say to my students, before you go on any platform, look at the mission statement, because the mission statement will tell you who and what that platform is trying to achieve. And so therefore, you don't try to make every platform, I don't expect to go, right, one situation is going to be my entire life. Everybody wants to hang out with me, has to come to the pub. That's it. You just, we go to work, we go to, you go all over the place, don't you? So, and again, you just separate your digital in the same way.
Michelle, this has been absolutely inspiring. I didn't get to one of the questions I originally was going to ask, but I think that our topic, nevertheless, was fascinating. If folks wanted to get hold of you, I'm assuming LinkedIn is the perfect place to do it.
Never on it. No. LinkedIn is perfect. Michelle Benson on LinkedIn, definitely. And/or Culture of Philanthropy is my website.
Amazing. Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Great to be here, Jack. Thank you so much for the invitation.